Have you ever looked at your life and thought, everything is fine? So why do I feel like something's missing? Maybe you have a good job, you take care of your family, you handle your responsibilities, but somewhere in the back of your mind, you keep thinking there's something more. What happens when that feeling does not go away? And how do you know whether it's fear, aging, money, or your own thinking keeping you stuck in the same place? That's what we're getting into today, next on the podcast. Let's do this.
The No Sitting on the Sideline Dad podcast, a podcast about a journey of discovery, figuring out life, being a parent, and trying to grow as a human. Welcome to the podcast. Here's your host, Joe Foley.
Welcome back to the No Sitting on the Sideline Dad podcast. I'm your host, Joe Foley. My guest today is Dr. Kim Nugent, a dream builder, master coach, leadership expert, and author. Kim's gone through some major changes in her own life. She built a successful career in hospitality, but she knew she wanted something different, like everybody does. She eventually went back to school, earned her doctorate, and became a university faculty member. Later served as a university president. In this conversation, this is why it matters. We talk about getting stuck on autopilot, limiting beliefs, fear, why it may not be too late to build something different in your life. We keep getting one question that keeps coming up again and again and again. What would you love? I want to start with Kim's own story. When we get into the dream building process, I asked her to take me back to the point when she realized she cannot keep living that way. Welcome back to the podcast, Dr. Kim Nugent.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, one thing I want to ask, before we explain the dream building process, take me back to a moment in your life when you realized you could not keep living the same way. What happened? What finally made you decide to do something and change it?
Yeah, I can say that's happened several times, but the one that's most important to me is I started out my career in the hospitality industry. I really worked to the very top of what I could achieve within the business. I was general manager, I was a divisional manager. But there was this nagging little thought in the back of my head. And even though from everyone looking on the outside, it looked like I had made it, and certainly had from a career perspective and had all these things, it's not what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do, and I had really kind of been pushing it down for about 20 years, is I wanted to be a university faculty member. And I'm like, you know what? Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to have to get a doctorate. I'm going to have to start at the bottom. I have to go back to an hourly employment. I get all that. And this means more to me than just anything else. So I had this vision for my life. And finally, when the pain got big enough, I will say, that I was able to push forward and actually manifest the thing that I really wanted for my life.
Can you take me back to when the pain got big enough? What was that feeling?
Yeah. So, I think a lot of people in the workforce today probably feel similarly. You're doing the right thing for your family, you're earning money and all of those things. But the joy and fulfillment is not there like it once was. It just becomes sort of this thing that you feel like you have to do and maybe feel like you have no choices because you have commitments. But what I found is that's not actually true, that the things that we say to ourselves is really the results that we achieve. So if I believe that I have no choice, that's exactly what's going to happen. If I think, you know what? I know I can make this work, and I know that there's going to be some things that are going to come up, but I'm going to go for it. And I think there's also people listening that have achieved many things in their life, but maybe they've forgotten. And somehow as adults, we forget that childlike outlook. When you thought anything was possible and your imagination was amazing and there were no barriers, we lose that over time.
Well, I think as people get older, we start to realize all the stuff we wanted to do that we couldn't do because of our responsibilities, and we feel stuck. Like autopilot, for example. We go on autopilot, like get up, same time every day, make sure we have a cup of coffee, make sure we work out, wherever we do the ritual in the morning, and off to work we go. How do people recognize autopilot?
Well, we can start here. So one of the things, though, is if you feel comfortable, like, if I were to say to somebody, how's your life? And they go, it's okay. Well, okay is not a life you would love. So like there's no energy around that. And it has become comfortable. So when we're comfortable, we are on autopilot. And I think the thing is we're not even thinking anymore. We've sort of pushed those dreams and thoughts about one day, someday, whether I want to go to Italy or the Greek islands, or I want to write a book, or, I can't because my kids are this age. And of course there's no way, or we don't have the money and all that. That's very constrictive thinking. But once I start to open our mind up to the possibility of something, then it's almost like the universe opens up and all these people or resources show up that you were before not even aware of. And so first it starts with us always.
What are some of the warning signs? Like, can you give us a little bit deeper into autopilot?
So, I think sometimes we're more present to what other people say than what we say. But if you have a friend, for example, who said, one day, Joe, I'm going to fill in the blank, whatever that is. And you check in with them, you come back to dinner a couple years and they're still saying, Joe, one day I'm going to, and nothing has changed. So, that to begin with is really the opportunity to look at something different. And I think the thing is that one of the things in my training is there is a language for success. And little words can keep us stuck. And changing just a few things can absolutely open up some new possibilities that weren't available to, them an hour ago before they started taking a look at that. So one of the biggest questions that I always start out with is, what would you love? That is not a question you normally get asked or even think about. It's like, what would I like, right? We kind of settle for, as adults, we have learned to settle because either our family told us that, people at work have told us that, society has told us that, and the other thing that is sometimes gets us back to autopilot or comfortable is the fact that, Joe, you should be just happy with what you have. But the truth is, all of us deserve things we would love, but we have now discounted ourselves so much so that we bought into that. And it's just not true. Absolutely. And those are very limiting beliefs. So we start to have to, first of all, you have to start to hear your thoughts. So one of the tools that I always work with clients on the first is notice what you're noticing. So what that means is notice what you're thinking. In this situation, I'm going to make this phone call. I'm going to go into this meeting. I'm going to have a conversation with my son or daughter, whatever that is. What am I thinking when I go into that? I use this example sometimes when I do some mindset training with teams, and we've already done some work on mindset about a judger mindset or a learner mindset and everything else. And so, they're following along just as adults do, and they're really good sports about it. And I'll say, let's put this to the test. You've had a hard week at work. It's Friday. You're driving home. Now, in Houston, Texas, we have a lot of traffic. So wherever you are, depending on where your traffic is or how long your commute is. And so you're about to pull into the driveway of your house, whether that happens to be a garage door that you're opening, whether that happens to be an apartment gate, whether that's a carport or you're parking on the street. Now you've gotten out of your vehicle and you start walking through the door, and you need to start thinking about, who are you in that moment? Am I thinking about, God, had the kids even started their dinner, or what's the house look like, or how much laundry do I have to? And that person is walking through the door, as opposed to, you know what? I'm so grateful to be walking home and getting to see my significant other or my kiddos or my dog or cat or whatever. So I'm excited and curious to find out what their day was like, as opposed to just another day.
Well, I was thinking about that too. It's just that, like you said, mentioned words stuck in your head and stuff. You start talking, and mind's a powerful thing, and you can actually put yourself into like a loop, a bad loop.
I think that's what most people do, honestly, and again, undistinguished, that's all it is. So if you did a life assessment right now in health and well-being, loving relationships, and that could be with your partner, your kids, or your extended family, or your friends. It could be vocation or full self-expression. So vocation doesn't necessarily have to be your job. It could be, gosh, I would love to learn another language or paint or write poetry or whatever that is, something you said a long time ago and you sort of pushed to the background. Or I want more freedom with time and money. All of those things can actually happen, but first we have to think about, what are we thinking? And one of the things that is a dream killer, I say, is comparison. So if I compare my life to your life and I think, oh my gosh, you're like this mega star and you got it all together, and my life isn't that way, I'm going to keep myself stuck just based on that thought.
It's interesting too. Can you give me explain limited beliefs in plain language for people who don't understand it? Can you give me in plain language?
Oh yeah, I can't do it. I'm too old. I'm not thin enough, smart enough, attractive enough. I don't have the education. I certainly don't have the time. I can't get any PTO because my boss won't let me. I'm going to lose my benefits. I could go on and on about all those limiting beliefs. And what you said is super important. And so let's talk about people that your audience would recognize. Oprah Winfrey's, Jack Canfield, Howard Schultz with Starbucks, certainly. And we could go on and on and on. Bruce Springsteen, Walt Disney. I mean, these are obviously big names, but they weren't big names overnight. They failed many times before they could actually become successful. And that's what people don't see. I think what we've lost today is we are such an instant gratification society. If I try something 3 times, wasn't meant to be, I told you. I can't do that. And so, one of my favorite, I have many, but one of my favorite is Howard Schultz. When he decided that he wanted to have a coffee shop, he went to seek a loan, and they told him there was no market for coffee. He went to get a loan. He tried 244 times before he got his first loan. Now, if you look at that man's success today, people don't know that part. Now, the reason that gets me excited is what if he had stopped at 243?
Oh, we wouldn't have the Starbucks, right? Yeah.
When we try something at work or we have a conversation or we get a no, we think that's the end of it. Okay, I tried. What else can I do? That is only the beginning. So you learn something from that. And one of the things that Thomas Edison said is failure is actually feedback.
Well, it was interesting too. I was thinking about, people over 50. Is it too late for people?
Never. And I'll tell you what. So at 50, I learned how to Latin dance. At 60, I wrote my first book. I've written 10 best-selling books. Who knows what 70 plus is going to look like for sure. But I met this woman. I take courses all the time. I'm a lifelong learner. I'm totally curious about everything. I just can't get enough of that. So here I am, kind of like you and me, and this woman is on Zoom, and we're all in a class together, and she's 92, and she's writing her first book. But what impressed me was not that so much. If you could have seen her eyes, they were just glistening. I mean, they were so beautiful because she was alive, and she didn't think that she was too old. In fact, her grandson was kind of helping her. It's okay. You just tell that you write this book and it's going to be awesome. And so again, Mary Morrissey's mother at 85, she had lost her husband and really wasn't sure whatever. And so Mary had her start thinking about, well, do you have a dream? And she said, no, I don't have a dream. And so she said, was there ever anything that you ever wanted to do that maybe you never even tried? And she said, well, yeah, China painting. And so anyway, she said, okay. So she bought some supplies and she took some lessons. Anyway, she ended up having gallery shows. She ended up writing a book. It's all from 85 to 92. So absolutely, it's never too late. It's the things we say to ourselves that keep us stuck or have us continuing to go forward and grow.
What was one time that you had to face your own limiting belief, and how did you confront it?
Oh, wow. I can definitely talk about this. So I would say now it's going to be 15 months ago. So as a coach, I have to walk the walk, talk the talk. And so as I'm learning and I'm applying the things that I'm learning, so the first area for me was really money. I'll say money in particular. So how Ken's vocabulary 15 months ago was like this. No, I can't do that because, I haven't budgeted for it or I don't have the money to do that. And that was as true as my name is Kim. Like there is no way that you could have argued with me about that. But I started learning these principles, and a woman said to me when I was getting the training, she said, I said something like, hey, I can't sign up for this class because I don't have the money. And she said, instead of looking at it this way, could you look at it as you're investing in yourself? And I thought, Well, it's an interesting way of looking at it. And so anyway, it was an expensive program. I'll say that. And I did not have it in savings. I did not have it. That is the honest to goodness truth. And so she kept talking to me and she basically said, kind of like if I signed up for the program, that she had a belief that I would be successful and the money would come. And I didn't believe it. I'm telling you, I did not believe it at all. But I believed that she believed it. And within 2 months, I paid off the entire thing.
Wow.
And it was the most amazing thing. And went, oh my gosh, I just saw something for myself I've never seen before because I believed it was possible. I had clients coming from places that I never expected because I opened my mind up to the possibility that maybe that budget conversation I had had for 60 plus years was alive and well, was keeping me stuck. That's one thing. So then I expanded that to travel. So one of the things that I said I wanted to do, because I am of retirement age, and I said, I want to go on a trip once a quarter. That's what I said. So that was kind of putting it out there. Well, let me just tell you what my life is like today. It's unbelievable. So I went to Turkey in November. I went to Los Angeles in January. In February, I went to New Zealand. Then I went to San Diego. Just came back from Singapore. I mean, it's just wasn't even one trip a quarter. It's been amazing. So it all went back to me, and I'm telling you how it is. You know, this woman who thought, I can't do it. My normal thing was, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. Yeah, well, that's true, Kim. You can't do that because that's what you think.
Well, one thing I was interested about is also the dream building process. What is that?
So basically, it's really a coaching program, but it starts really with mindset. Then start to think about what would you love in the area of love and relationships or in the area of travel, in the area of time and money or vocation, whatever it is. And then what happens, I think, is a lot of people do not first take time for self-reflection. Then the second thing is writing it down. Like literally writing it down, like, who am I with? How does it feel? What am I hearing? What am I wearing? Where am I? And when that becomes reality in terms of your own mind, again, if you can see it, you can achieve it. But we don't stop and do that. And I think I don't know the statistics anymore, but there was really probably back in the 80s, you know, when MBA programs were super hot at the time and they were talking about goal setting. They had a statistic. I'm not going to quote it because it's changed over the years. But if you write down your goals, and in this case, write down your dream, those people are more likely to achieve it every time. But if it's just a thought, you know what? So, for example, let's just say this year, this is not my dream. But let's just say, for example, I wanted to be comfortable running a 10K. So I've decided, you know what? I've got my gym clothes. I got my shoes. When I come home Monday night from work, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to start with the mile, and then I'll work my way. Well, you know, I got home late from work, and so, gosh, I'm just really too tired. I'll start tomorrow. So we have these things that come up called fear, or we call them paradigms. So one could be delay, one could be distraction, one could be dissuasion, one could be, we call it DEFCON 1, where literally fear is in your body that's going to keep you stuck. And one of the things we distinguish really is that's paradigm. That is actually a catalyst for growth. So when the fear shows up, it will show up. What are you going to do with the fear? Are you going to listen to the fear, or are you going to say, not today, fear, not today, and then go and do something else? And so again, you want to be able to design that dream. You want to decide this is it. So I bet everybody in the audience has achieved at least one goal, if not many goals in their lifetime. If they look back at what happened was they were thinking, you know what, I want to get this degree. And no matter what comes my way, I'm going to get that degree. And they did. Or I'm going to get that job, or I'm going to get that promotion, or I'm going to start that podcast, or I'm going to have, you know, children, or, you know, or I'm going to buy a house, whatever that is. You decided, and that's exactly how it was. Now, that doesn't mean there weren't challenges. But when you decide 100% and you go for it, it happens.
Well, definitely too. Also, I was thinking while you were talking and stuff like that is about, you know, I'll go to the gym tonight. I got my stuff and I come home tired. Do people start to feel guilty from like guilt or they feel like, you know, been letting themselves down.
And that only makes it worse, right? Because now
Yeah.
it's even more constrictive thinking. So, and paradigms don't say, hey, I'm here to kill your dreams off. They're going to keep you safe. Why risk it? And so again, we tell ourselves stories all the time to justify why we're not moving in the direction. And all we have to do, Joe, is take one step every day. I don't have to worry about all the how. That's another thing that keeps people stuck. They have to know the 12-point checklist before they take that first step. What if you just manifested the dream or wrote it out and saw yourself and started getting yourself excited about it, deciding this is it? And then when the fear comes up, you say, not today, fear, and then you continue to move forward. And just take one action a day. It's not so overwhelming.
It's like compounding them, like one little step, one step. All of a sudden, you're like the top of the mountain.
100%, and that's exactly how, the people who have climbed these mountains, Everest or whatever, it was one step at a time for sure. And I think the other thing is, if you think about it, you took one step every day, just one small step. At the end of the year, your life would be completely different.
Also, I was curious, can you give me an example? Some people you worked with, maybe some real stories that really touched you that went through this process.
Yeah, I could tell you lots, but there was one person very well accomplished, top of her career. And the thing that I think is really interesting that she shared with me is she didn't feel like she had a voice at the table. Mm-hmm. She attends senior leadership meetings and things like that. And so we started to do some work around that. By doing this work, so now she has a voice at the table. She actually got an award from our company as the person who emulated the values of the company. And the energy she has to really tackle her day is so different than when we started. And literally that happens in 12 weeks. That's how fast it can happen. To be able to have something that she's truly wanted. And she's been saying this for years. And all of a sudden, when we went to work on mindset, when she asked to work with me on mindset, that's what happened. That's one. That's many.
We're all talking about the dream building process, but the 4 areas of life. What are the 4 areas of life quickly, and why are they important?
So health and well-being, love and relationships, then vocation / expression or full self-expression, and then freedom with time and money. So those 4 domains are really where we start in terms of a life assessment. In the 12-week program, we only work on one of those domains because we can't be chasing everything all at one time. We want to be as focused as we can and as clear as we can so that they achieve the result they actually want to achieve. I think everybody, as an adult, I think that we all feel that we have something that's kind of gnawing away. Maybe we kept pushing it down, thinking all those things we said to ourselves are possible. But, one of the things about kids that I love so much is they dream. Think about it. If you had a magic wand and you could do anything, what would it be? And so that's just a good place to start. We do an exercise that I love very much. So after, somebody has decided the domain they want to work on first, so let's say it's vocation. And then we have them think about for a minute. We do a time machine exercise. So it's 3 years from now. So now you and I are talking. It's 3 years from now. It's July 18th, 2029. I'm going, oh my gosh, Joe, it's been 3 years since I've seen you. Tell me about your life. And you're not telling me about something you're going to. You say, Kim, I am, da-da-da-da-da-da, whatever that is. So you're coming from as if it's already achieved today. But the truth of the matter is you have a vision about what it could be. And you're telling me about who you're with, what you're wearing, if you're in Italy and maybe having a cup of coffee and then you're walking down into the village and on and on. So you're getting excited about that. And so once you again can see it and you write it down, you're more likely to be able to achieve it. And you can keep changing it or you keep expanding it. So just because you wrote it down today doesn't necessarily mean that that's the way it is. There's another tool that we use that I like a lot. So when I was telling you that I started in hospitality and to my career and I wanted to be a faculty member, I signed up for a doctorate because I knew that's what I had to have. I knew I was going to start at the bottom. So I applied. I got accepted. Yay. It's the first night of class. It's a Friday night. I'll never forget it as long as I live. They do the introductions of everybody in class, and I'm listening carefully. 17 of the 18 people all had education backgrounds. bachelor's and master's in education. This is an education doctorate. I am the business person. I am the only business person in this room. The teachers start teaching. I have no clue what they're saying. It is like Greek to me. And I mean, I am scared out of my mind because I'm like, okay, I guess I'm not supposed to be here. I guess I should just quit. But I didn't. So on the break, there was a woman sitting next to me, and her name's Leah. And I said, Leah, do you understand what they're talking about? She goes, I don't have a clue. And I thought, I'm not my tribe. And that gave me enough courage in that moment to kind of continue that path. Now, when I said what I wanted was to be a university, well, they know. That's what I knew at the time. But one thing we instruct our clients to do is that or something greater, even that, something greater, even, or even better still. That's what we tell them. That's what I thought. Well, let me just tell you about my life. I did become a university faculty member. And a few years later, because I had administrative experience, I ended up becoming a university president several times. That was never on the radar. I didn't know that to even think about that. So when you say to the world that or something even greater still, it's amazing what happens.
It's amazing how you just, I remember listening one time a video or show it's on social media, everything. Will Smith. I don't say Will Ferrell, but it's not Will Smith. He was talking about the good stuff that's on the other side of fear. He talked about the story about him and his friend going parachuting, and he said, jump. Everything else on the other side of fear. And I thought that was really important because, why do you think fear is such a powerful thing on us? Because I think it really is a powerful emotion.
It is very much so. And, one, we have to recognize that that's kind of going back to your thinking. Notice what you're noticing. But I think the other thing is, what are you going to do with that? When that arises, and it will arise, do I stay safe and be comfortable? Or do I do something that I don't know necessarily how it's going to all turn out, but I'm willing to take that first jump out of the plane?
Well, we're talking about limited beliefs, talking about fear. And as a parent myself, I have a son, but some people listening might be parents, dads, and moms and stuff. How can they help teach to the children about limiting beliefs?
Yeah. So if we're present to what we're thinking or what other people are saying, and so usually when I'm working with a client, I'll say, I'm very sensitive to words, and may I have permission to pause you if I hear something? And they always say yes. And so, for example, if you're in, I know teenagers, or we all do this, not just teenagers, certainly. But, and I don't know how old your son is, but I'm thinking, so let's pretend for a minute. He goes, Dad, I can't do da-da-da-da-da. So one thing you could teach him to do that would totally interrupt that brain patterning, which is whatever age he is or whatever age you are, we've been saying and thinking that same way a long time. So if I don't catch myself thinking it and it comes out of my mouth and I say, I don't know, or I'm not good at, then you pause it with 3 words and you say, up until now. So what that does is it interrupts your brain pattern, the neurotransmitters, and now your brain is like, what? And now you can choose to do or say something different. And all of a sudden, I just did training this week in a prison with guys that were saying they didn't know how to do this or whatever. And so I taught them up until now. And then they started having a game with it. It was so fun because they would catch each other hearing it. And then they would start coaching one another to say, up until now. Yeah.
Well, wrapping up, I was thinking about this one question. Picture one person listening feeling overwhelmed, discouraged, or convinced them nothing will change. What do you want to say direct to that person before we finish?
I guess maybe the simplest example that maybe they can apply safely. So one of the things I think is if, for example, let's just say they're going to have a conversation with someone and they've already decided before they get on the phone whether it's a relative or a friend, and they, this is going to be a hard conversation, or this is going to be a difficult conversation, or this is not going to go well, or it's going to end in an argument. What if you take 3 breaths before you get on the phone and you think about, wow, I'm excited about this conversation. I can't wait to find out about this person and catch up, or I'm going to be curious. I'm going to come from a completely different space. I'm telling you, it's going to go the way you think it's going to go. So if you want to try a little exercise just to see if there's any truth to anything I'm saying, this is an exercise. I actually had said this week. This gentleman had decided he was going to call his wife, and he knew it was going to be a difficult conversation. So he thought, I heard what Kim said. I'm going to take my breaths, and I'm going to think, you know what? It's going to go well. So the next day I see him, and he goes, Kim, you're not going to believe this. I did what you said, and it went great. And we didn't have an argument. I'm like, awesome.
See, it does. The mind's a powerful thing. Where they connect you more, find more about your stuff, and where they can find and connect with you.
Absolutely. So the easiest way is through my website, which I'd love to talk to anyone in the audience to learn more. I can help them. My website is doctorates, Nugent, Nugent, speaks.com. That's the easiest way to find out.
Kim, thank you much for being on the podcast today. I really do appreciate all links will be in the show notes for this episode. Thank you much for your time.
Thank you very much.
One thing I keep coming back to from this conversation is that question. What would you love? Not what you think you should do. Not what other people expect you to do. What would you actually love? Kim talked about learning Latin dance at 50. Writing her first book at 60, meeting a 92-year-old woman who wrote her own first book. That doesn't mean change is easy, because it never is. It does mean age does not automatically decide what comes next. I also like the 3 words Kim shared for the moment when you catch yourself saying, you can't do it. I can't do that. Up till now. Maybe you did not know how before. Maybe you were afraid to try. Maybe timing was not right. Up till now. That leaves the door open. If this conversation made you think about something you have been putting off or take a small step today, write it down. Make the call. Look up the class. Start the project. You do not need to know every step before you take the first one. You can learn more about Dr. Kim Nugent at drnugentspeaks.com. Link will be in the show notes for this episode. If this episode helps you, follow No Sitting on the Sideline Dad podcast or nosittingonthesideline.com and share with somebody who may be feeling stuck or wondering if it's too late to make a change. Thank you for listening. Take care. God bless. Give your kids a hug and tell them how much you love them. Until next time, see ya.